My name is Dalmore, and I grew up in a small village outside of Waterdeep that followed the teachings of the Raven Queen. We followed most of the normal teachings from what I understood, but it wasn't till I was much older and it was much too late that I learned that we had a few things wrong about her. We depicted her as a penguin because what was a penguin but a flightless raven, my father used to joke. The other was that the dead were not meant to stay dead. Every 3 years, we had a great festival of revival, where the dead would walk among the earth once again to go on a pilgrimage to the astral plane to serve the Raven Queen for the rest of eternity. We called it the Great Graduation Ceremony. The dead would soberly walk out to the north side of the village, from the south side's Colosseum, to a portal the high priest would conjure, saying that this was the best way to celebrate the lives and deaths of those who had fallen, and the best way to get to the astral plane. I spent my entire life thinking that this was the natural way of things, and I was not saddened when I was 10 years old. That was the year I had the honor of watching both my parents graduate. On my 16th year, I watched my brother take his steps towards his new life of worship in the graduation ceremony. I was the last in my family, and the last of my name that had yet to take the next steps in life. 1 year later, I met the love of my life. She had feathers as white as snow, and for that, I called her my little turtle dove. Her eyes were a royal purple, and when her feathers would catch the light just right, her plume would show every color of the rainbow. I convinced her to marry me, and she convinced me to take the oath of protector, one of the highest ranking in office that I could hope to become, that being only 2 steps away from high priest, which, in my village, to become a priest or a high priest, you have to have an affinity for magic, which I was not versed in. I studied for a year and passed my certification to become a monk of the Raven Queen, and my wife blessed me with more good news that I would also soon become a father. I praised the Raven Queen and all the blessings that she had shown me. All was right with the world. I could not have been happier. But, as they say, happiness comes before great tragedy. In my 19th year, a great plague swept across the village, claiming both my wife and daughter. After this, I stayed up praying for answers as to why the Raven Queen would allow such sadness to befall me. The plague, however, was seen as a good omen to the rest of the town, as it was a graduation year. The dead would not have to stay dead long, and the loved ones that we lost we would be able to see again, if only for a short moment. I was not sure that this could be seen as a blessing, for why would the Raven Queen call upon my little girl at such a small age? She was barely a chick in her papa's arms before she was taken away from me. But I had a duty and a promise to keep to my wife as a monk of the order. That was my first revival ritual as a monk, and I got to see up close what most of the village did not. I was a part of the blood magic that was done to raise the dead, willingly giving my life force to see my wife and child. I would later look back on this to know it was only necromancy, and there was nothing holy about it. When I saw my wife stir towards the end of the ritual, I could feel that something was off. Her normal, pure white plume was now a sickly gray, and her once beautiful eyes were now a dead white. She simply stood up, and after being revived, and didn't even glance my way. There was nothing about her that remained. No love, no nothing. Just a mindless slave to the high priest. This was confirmed as the first step she took was on top of our daughter's not yet risen form. There was a sickly pop, and that took everything in my power to keep from losing my lunch. My daughter then got up as if nothing was wrong, but you could clearly tell her neck was broken. Tears welled up in my eyes, and all I could do was weep softly, for I knew that whatever the high priest intended for everyone in my village was not something as holy as being with the Raven Queen in worship. My wife and child's twisted form, along with everyone else that had died from the plague and old age, had magic veils placed on them so that the village would not be able to see the details of what was really happening. And as a monk, it was tradition for us to stay in the Colosseum that this accursed ritual was held for 3 nights after the graduation. I would hear from others that this was to place spells on us to forget what we had seen, but I don't think anything would have let me forget what I had seen that day. This was later affirmed by a great shadow that fell upon the village. The zombies that had not yet made it to the center of the village yet had stopped, frozen by stillness and rage that you could feel from an enormous silhouette of a humanoid figure. I can only vaguely recall what happened next. There was a presence in my head, and I could tell it was in everyone else's head near me as well. And a voice that sounded like thousands of voices in all the known languages in all the lands screamed with wrath and hatred. I didn't understand what they said, but the message was clear as day. How dare you undermine the natural order of life and death? How dare you attack me at my home of Shadowfell with the accursed dead? This cult of necromancers shall be destroyed once and for all. The silhouette that I just knew in my heart to be of the Raven Queen descended upon the town, killing everyone, women, children, the young, and the old, and the newly risen. And my God, I stood frozen and watched as my little girl and my wife were torn to shreds, dying in front of me for a second time. Without realizing it, I ran. I spent several years running and trying to forget the pain that the worship of the Raven Queen had brought me. To better forget, I drank. And when there was no drink left, I fought with my bare hands to feel something other than the shame and the heartache that I constantly had with me. I did my best to avoid any other avian races and enshadowed figures because I never knew who would be a follower of the Raven Queen, the true Raven Queen that had cursed my life so. In a drunken stupor, I think I was 26, maybe 27, I met an information broker that said that I didn't have to run anymore and that I could be protected by his family. I was a shadow of the man I once was, but he looked at me with kindness and offered me protection from the Raven Queen, but only if I did a job for him. I was tired of being scared and alone, so I followed him to meet his family. Xanathar was a curious creature. He told me things that I did not know about my village and explained to me how I could be free of my past in my old age. I just had to help take over a small town called Baldur's Gate. There, I would be able to retire with as much drink as I could handle for the rest of my years. What he offered sounded like heaven. I accepted. If you're finding this tome, that means I'm probably dead. Do me a favor, go to the lower town and ask for a drink. It's called the Cleanser from the Dirty Bird Saloon. Tell them to put it on Dalmore's tab. I ran the place. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that speed paint of my Aarakocra monk Dalmore. Hoping to put out more things like this where I create D&D characters, their backstories, get them 3D printed, and do a quick little speed paint. If you want to see more like this, don't hesitate to like and subscribe. Hope you have a great day. Nailed it!